Welcome one and all to Umami Manga. I'm one of your hosts, Petter, and with me I got my co-host, James.
Hello!
And today we're talking about Volume 4 of To Your Eternity. The follow-up volume to Volume 3. I guess that's obvious, but it is very much tied to Volume 3. As this series so far has been kind of like a 2-book at a time thing, with the first 2 being about March and Perona. And these 2 most recent ones have been about Gugu and Rean. And without further ado, I guess let's talk about the characters one at a time, and let's start with Fushi as usual. His body, as we saw at the end of the last volume, has grown older, which I think is interesting just because, the boy never got to be that old. And so it's like, and it is explained that since he hasn't changed away from that form at all in the past 4 years, that's why he is affected by time just like anybody else is. But it is, I think, especially interesting just because this, no one ever looked like that. No human ever looked the way he looks now because that boy died before he got to be that old. So it's interesting in that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just his body is able to replicate what the aging process would have been like for the boy.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
We kind of talked about this last time, and I think that I mean my assumption was wrong because I didn't realize that he just hadn't transformed the whole time. Because as soon as he transforms, he goes back to how the boy used to look,
right,
and everything. But I still think that what we were saying is still true in that he's maturing. He's basically going through the life cycle of a human being, from a baby to an infant to child and etc. And now I think he's in kind of a teenager adolescence stage where he begins to question things.
Yes.
And
yes.
He's able to, or he tries to vent his emotions in certain ways, a little more rash in some of his decision making. And I think that you can see that there's definitely a change happening in him as he becomes, I guess you could say, more human, but also just starts to grow more and becomes more mature.
Yeah, he has learned so much over these past 4 years. He speaks perfectly normally now, and just the way he has adapted to human life is awesome. Just because he really embraced that. He made the choice to embrace human life and just live completely as a human. We also learned that he hasn't even been using any other powers either. He hasn't been creating items and stuff. He just wants to live just like everybody else, like Gugu and the others. And I think that's very respectable and really awesome.
He's living his Little Mermaid life right there.
Yeah.
Want to be as the humans are.
Right.
People are, whatever it is.
Yeah. He still can't read a map, though, or at least at the beginning of this volume, he doesn't know how to read a map.
No one's got time for that.
Right. One thing we talked about last time a little bit was whether, he can only feel pain, or if he can maybe feel other types of feelings and emotions in people. And it does seem at the beginning of this book that he is able to pick up on Rean's affection for Gugu, which I guess, depending on how you see it, I guess you could see it as some kind of pain, but it seems more like, just the sense of liking someone a lot.
Right.
That he's picking up on that. So maybe it is more than just pain that he can notice in people.
Yeah. Again, we saw this a bit in Volume 3, but having it here is a little different because he doesn't recognize it as pain this time. He indicates that, hey, wait, this is the same thing as Gugu. So he understands that it's different than pain, or at least he makes it seem like he does.
Right.
So I'm thinking he's got to be able to differentiate between the two, and it's not just some sort of pain. But I could be misreading it.
Yeah, no, but I think so too. It seems that way, and I also had the thought that maybe pain is easier for him to pick up on or to sense, but that he can theoretically feel anything in others, but pain might be especially easy because it's maybe such a strong kind of thing, perhaps. Although that's just something that came to mind. Potentially something like that.
Okay.
It's a stronger stimuli in a sense,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah. Mm.
But yes, what I thought was really a really nice little callback that he made at the party was he recited some of Perona's last words to him. He said to Gugu,
Yeah.
"The way you live is something you win for yourself." I thought that was awesome, and
That was
especially
awesome.
because at the time, because that was like volume 2, and at that time he hadn't started really talking yet, like not
Mm-hmm.
properly anyway. And so it was kind of questionable, like whether, like how much he understood of people, like when people talked to him. It was like we we couldn't know for sure exactly to what extent he understood them, but it appears that he did understand her words there, and like not just the words, but understand the meaning behind them too, and because he was able to use
Yeah.
them in such a profound way here, so
Mm-hmm.
really like that.
Yeah, I loved it, and I
Mm.
think going to what you're talking about, it's a stimuli that left an impression on him. Whether he was able to understand it at the time, now after 4 years later, he's able to remember those words and or understand what he's saying or what they mean.
Right, right. That's possible.
Although at the same time, he may not remember where they came from exactly. Although he knows he wasn't the one who said it.
Fair. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I guess there is a lot we don't know completely, but still, it was really nice. And since, especially now, since Perona hasn't been in these books
Yeah.
for two whole books now, it was really nice to kind of get that little reminder of her. Kind of, she hasn't been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
She's you know she's still relevant even though she's not here right now.
Mm-hmm.
After March's form was stolen by the Nokker, and Fushi was, he was getting out of the rubble as in the form of the boy, he felt Gugu's pain as he was getting out of there, and it was kind of visualized by these little zing things, like black little sparks, kind of.
Yeah.
He was feeling Gugu's pain, and it seemed like it was, and obviously that was when Gugu was taking the whole debris over on top of him, like as we
Mm-hmm.
saw later on. So that was a lot of, basically, probably like more or less unbearable pain that Gugu was experiencing, and Gugu felt that, or sorry, and Fushi felt that, and that obviously led up to him turning into Gugu, right as Gugu did die, and that was one of the most devastating moments, I think. Just his reaction first of all, and how he felt that Gugu died. He felt the pain that led up to his death, yet he was still in denial about it as he was fighting the Nokker. That was so sad,
Mm-hmm.
terribly sad.
He really did lose a brother, and
Yeah.
March's death was painful uh, for the reader and Perona, and even to Fushi himself. Obviously, that was technically, or not technically, but that was in a way, figuratively, his mother.
Yes.
But this death, I think, it just has so much more weight for all the people involved.
Hmm.
But well, I won't say all the people because that death was really hard on Perona. The
Hmm.
This death has more weight for Fushi because he has been with Gugu for such a long time, the longest time he's spent with one person,
Yeah.
and he'd gone through so much change and progression, growth, that of course he had grown attached to Gugu in the way he did.
Yeah.
So I think in this case, Gugu's death had much more of an impact and just made it much more difficult for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And on top of that, it's also the first time he experienced death after having become aware of what it is and what it means, because it was in the previous volume that Gugu taught him what death is and all about that. So,
Mm-hmm.
when he experienced the death of the boy and the death of March, while he was affected by those events, like, he didn't quite fully understand it. But at this point, he has grown up to that. Well, he has grown up enough so that he knows what it means. He knows how final it is, and just, yeah, just how sad it is, and yet he understands death to the point where he understandably will be more affected by it than he was when he was more or less an infant, you know.
Right.
And yeah, just seeing him so absolutely broken is completely understandable after all of this. Like, I think him dealing with Gugu's death was portrayed really well because it was like it was there the entire time after Gugu had passed away. There was like in various ways it was always there with Fushi, like in every scene you could see in various ways how Gugu's death had affected him and how it was weighing him down and all of that stuff. Like it was so I thought that was so well executed.
Agreed. Completely. Going back real quick to, you were talking about like the pain
Yes.
symbolism, like the sparkingness. I don't know exactly what you call it, but
Right, right.
in comparison, when he was talking with Rean and he could feel her feelings for Gugu, there was circular bubbles kind of
Oh,
around that
right.
part. So I wonder if we're seeing more visualization of these feelings that he's able to feel in others, or these
Right.
stimulus or pain. I don't know.
Mm.
At the very least, when Lean was feeling something, it was these bubbly things.
Right, yeah, yeah.
When Gugu was feeling that immense pain, it was these sparks.
Exactly.
Lack of a better word.
Right, yeah. Totally, totally. I think that's definitely like in both instances I think it's definitely those emotions of various kinds being visualized for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Moving on, I guess, a little bit. When Rean came to visit after the whole thing had happened, when she came to the house, and Fushi just sort of panicked and turned into Gugu kind of on a whim. When Rean hugged him, he had the same question in his head that Gugu had had many
Yeah.
times. Why am I me? And I think that I had two ideas as to why he would, like, why that question would come up to him. Like, well, obviously it came from Gugu, as we know from previous times. Like, he does adapt, like, thoughts and mindsets of sorts from the people that the people that pass away that he takes the form of. But I think part of it could be that he's because he's able to take the form of Gugu, but he can never truly completely become him, is why he might be asking himself, why am I me? But the other idea I had was related to what he said later when he lies to Rean and says that Fushi was the one who died and not Gugu. I had the thought that maybe part of him sort of wishes that it had been him that died instead of Gugu.
Mm.
And that's also like that could also be a reason for why he's questioning that, like, why am I me, potentially.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. I'm sure he feels immense guilt for Gugu's death and taking Gugu away from Dean and the rest of their family and everything.
Yeah.
I could see that. What one other way I saw it was maybe he is questioning because of having taken Gugu's will, he is questioning why he is the way he is. Why he is this immortal being that basically takes on the death of those he loves and also brings about this death. Well, wherever he goes, the Nokker comes and
Mm.
kills people along the way, and that's hard for him. People get, at least now, people get in danger, and I think he may be questioning that. Why am I this way? Why is this always happening?
Oh yeah.
Um, so that's
Right.
that's one way that's the way I took it then, but I could
Mm-mm.
definitely see it being more of a why was it Gugu and not me who died.
Right. No, but I like your idea there too. I hadn't considered that exactly, but I definitely like that one as well. I like how there's all these different ways to interpret this pretty simple question, or well,
Mm.
it's not a simple question. Why am I me is a very big question to be fair, but anyway,
It's a short question.
right, right. But yeah, that's really interesting. After he leaves, he starts talking to the beholder as he's walking away, and he, as you mentioned earlier, like he starts really questioning the beholder about like trying to really understand everything about himself, about the beholder himself, and about the world and the Nokkers and everything. Like he really is trying to understand it all, and he really expresses himself, like how he feels,
Mm-hmm.
his emotions. Like it's all laid bare there, kind of, which I thought was a really nice new side of him that we hadn't really gotten to see exactly before.
Yeah, I really like it. I think being able to express, or at least starting to express, your emotions is the sign that you're starting to grow up. You're starting to mature.
Hmm.
Now the next step is be able to control that, or
Right.
to vent that in other ways. So yeah, I'm excited to see where he grows from here and what this next arc brings for him in terms of growth.
Absolutely. Yeah, dude. So interesting. So exciting. But speaking of growth, we do kind of, well, he's trying to experiment and try to gain new stimuli as he's traveling with Pioran, and he kind of figures out that just like he can transform himself into any item or piece of food like that he would usually create, like replicate, he has, as we know since before, he is able to turn his body into that and lose consciousness. But similarly, he can also, presumably anyway, as he speculates, create like the limp bodies of the people that he would usually normally take the forms of himself, as he does with
Hmm.
the crab, for example.
Oh yeah.
So that was an interesting little thing about his body. So I guess basically at the core, as far as his powers are concerned, it's really all the same. Like the shapes that he takes and the shapes that he creates, it's all drawn from the same library or whatever however you want to call it. And so it doesn't really differentiate like a body, well, whether it has this life or not. It doesn't differentiate a body from a weapon or an item, like something like that. It's all kind of the same as far as those powers are concerned.
Hmm.
He just can't create life, it seems. So that was a little bit new information on that. At the end of the book, it kind of moves into a new arc, as it seems anyway, where Fushi and Pioran are taken prisoners and sent to Jananda Island, where Fushi signs up to fight in an arena in order to save Pioran and himself.
Yeah. Poor Pioran.
Yeah, yeah. It is nice to have her along though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
man, things are not going well.
But Fushi, man, is I'm not losing anybody else on this freaking journey.
No.
Let's. Although I doubt it.
Well, we shall see. We shall see.
I
Um,
could be wrong.
I mean, it would be nice. But anyway, what I thought was one of the nicer parts of this volume was basically the very end, where Fushi wins that battle at the arena by exposing himself. He doesn't worry about what people will think of him or about what will happen to him, just like Gugu did in the end
Hmm.
of his life.
Right.
So that was another nice wisdom that he got from Gugu. So yeah, do you got anything more on Fuji?
I do not.
All right, then let's move on to Gugu himself, the hero, the man.
Yeah. Honestly, one of my favorite characters that I've read. I mean, maybe
Mm.
this is just the high, and I'd be tempted to put him on a top 10 list of favorite characters. But at the same time, he had such little time compared to others that is that fair? But it was just so well done for the
Mm.
short amount of time he was there. That entire arc of his was great, and so much so that when I realized that he was dying, and that him. I mean, I was sad for Fushi, but I was probably mostly sad for Rean.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
when they had their moment together, I I was bawling.
Yeah.
I could not stop crying. And I think I cried through the next three chapters or so. I just could
Mm.
not stop.
You and me both.
And I don't know if I've had that experience reading a manga before.
Mm.
I've Attack on Titan, the ending, few chapters hit me pretty hard, but um, not not to this extent, I don't think.
Right.
And that's strong because I really like uh, the the tragedy that was in Attack on Titan throughout the whole story. But even then, I feel like this is, I don't know. For me, it was on another level, and maybe it's because I'm kind of susceptible to romance kind of stuff. But still, this was really impactful, and
Yes.
I think it will go down as one of my favorite tragic love stories in a sense.
Right, dude. Like, screw Romeo and Juliet. Gugu and Rean is where it's at.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
amen.
But like legit though, like I completely relate to everything you said there. Like this was like I remember vividly the first time I read this volume. I was actually at my parents' place, just trying to kill some time. I was reading the series at the time, so I picked up the next volume in line, which happened to be this one. And I
Hmm.
sat down in the living room, just started reading the book kind of casually, and God, that was not a good place to be around people when I was reading that. And today, when I read it for my second time, like about a year later, I cried just as much, if not more. Like my tears were, my cheeks were like soaking wet, and my eyes were overflowing, like I was drowning in tears. Like it was crazy. And it was like legit. It wasn't just like tears running down as I was reading. It was like I was legitimately like crying with my whole voice. Like that doesn't happen often. But I agree. Like I don't think any other manga has gotten that much out of me as much as this one has. It's
Right.
really something special, truly.
It was only 2 volumes that we've had Gugu here.
Right? Yeah. Right.
It's like, wow,
That makes it even more
that's
impressive.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So yeah, I guess getting a little bit more into detail on Gugu's story in this volume here, I think he was right in being hard on Shin, like his brother, when he showed up out of
Hmm.
nowhere, kind of after those 4 years. He was being very hard on him, and I don't blame him at all for that. It was awful, what he did to Gugu, and I think Gugu had already shown him kindness after the fact in the previous volume when he gave him the ring, and yeah, I guess I'll talk more about Shin later, but
Uh huh.
I do think Gugu was like I support him acting the way he did, I guess, and I thought also in that scene it was beautiful how he described his new family to Shin, every one of
Hmm.
them, Pioran, Buzman, Rean, Fushi, and it really goes to show how happy he was with them, and I really like that.
Yeah. I'm behind you. I think that Gugu totally was in the right for saying no to his brother, not just because of the terrible things that, or the terrible decision that Sheen made, but more so that he went through so much. His life had been changed, and he's gotten to a point where he's happy and able to accept himself.
Mm,
That going back to what his previous life would have been
mm,
is almost betraying what he is right now. And I think that him making the decision to stay as he is and not go back to his brother shows how much he's grown and to appreciate
yeah,
um, the man he's become. And yeah, I think I admire him for that decision.
absolutely, totally. And later on, or a little bit later, he woke up to Reen's sort of love confession when she was trying to put the ring on his finger, and I mean,
Yeah.
she was very rushed at the moment. She was very stressed out in the sense in that scene, I think. But
Mm.
that just waking up to all of that must have been so overwhelming and confusing. Like I don't blame him for acting so just weirded out by it as he was. Like he was definitely not ready for any of that,
Mm-hmm.
especially since it's possible that he might not have really suspected that she felt the same way about him.
Right.
He obviously must have wished for that to be the case, but he it's very possible that maybe he was completely under the assumption that she didn't like him back, and that would have made that scene even more just overwhelming and confusing for him. And it is also confirmed in that scene that he does indeed not have any memory of what he said to her when he was drunk.
Right.
So
Yeah, man. The booze just makes you go all away. Can't remember. Perfect amnesiac.
You're right. Especially if you're 12 years old, you're probably very sensitive to that.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate, but it's a bit of a stereotype where the hero accidentally confesses his love, doesn't realize it.
Right. Yeah.
Ishigami.
That scene though, like between him and Rean, when he had just woken up, was it was such a kind of cringy in a way, but like I thought it was still a really good scene. Like it was really like the two characters were really well written, I think, in that scene, and it really just I think it set up the party really well because I thought
Yeah.
it was really nice how at the party things were kind of stiff between them at first, but then it eventually led to the scene between them where they were able to kind of start talking more openly, very openly, like more probably than they had ever done before. Sadly, that was interrupted by the Nokker attack, but I
Hmm.
think going from that kind of stiff uh, facade thing that they had at the start of it made the moment later on work really, really well.
Yeah.
And speaking of the birthday party, on his way there, he bought the dream bellflower for Rean, the purple flower that he had seen her picking at the well before he had saved her life back then. And those are the flowers that I chose to use in our YouTube thumbnails for this podcast series.
Right.
So that's where that is from because that's well as you know I've said before, volume 3 and 4 are my two favorite volumes, so I wanted to have something impactful from that part of the story kind of represented in our thumbnails.
Yeah, I thought that was a really nice move from from Gugu
Yeah.
to give those flowers to her. I mean, obviously he didn't know that they were considered a bad omen,
Yeah.
but because they were the first gift that Gugu gave to Rin, she was obviously okay with it,
Mm,
which again, I mean, goes to show that the strength of their relationship at that point. But I think it enables them to talk to each other about what happened that day and
mm,
not be afraid of what the other will think. Well,
yeah.
mostly Gugu not be afraid of what Rin would say and give Rin the idea to say, wait a minute, maybe there's a connection here.
Right. For sure. And he ended up saving Reen's life one last time by shielding her from the rubble of the collapsing building.
Uh, he kind of saved it. He kind of saved her twice in this story. Once when the not scaffolding, they were on a deck of some sort, and then it crumbled. He pushed her out of the way as it crumbled down. So he saved her then, and then he saves her from the debris.
Right. Which was the first one you meant? Oh, there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's subtly kind of yeah. It's not shown really like very clearly, but yeah, he does push her back there
Hmm.
when the knockers initially attacked her. Right. Exactly.
Right.
And as they're kind of lying there under all of the debris, and that that final conversation between them is one of my favorite conversations in probably all of manga. Like that interaction there is just so beautiful, so well put together. Everything about how they decide to, go picking those flowers again together, and
Mm.
oh my god, I can't even talk about this without tearing up a little bit. It's just such a beautiful scene, and then it culminates in the kiss, and but before that, Gugu does say to Rin that he loves her, and literally face to face. But I thought that detail was really important as well. Like he didn't just say I love you. He said it when looking directly at her with no
Hmm.
mask between them, nothing between them. And yeah, that was such a perfect moment.
I mean, I don't mean to call anybody out, but if someone reads this and they are not emotional, I don't know, man. Like you
Uh-huh.
need to grow up. Maybe maybe. stop watching Naruto or uh, Sword Art Online or whatever. But like,
Oh, shots fired.
but like, look, I think there's something so poetic
Mm,
about this romance here in the way it's written
mm,
that I don't know it's able to stir in a feeling within you when you read it that sometimes you don't get in other mediums or in other series. Yeah, people get sad and emotional, and I'm not saying like this is the best thing ever written, but I think it's up there in terms of romance
mm.
and tragic love stories. I really do.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So I'd be surprised if someone were to say it, like if they were a fan, especially if they were a fan of this kind of stuff, and they were
Oh
to
yeah.
say it didn't do anything for me.
Mm,
I would be shocked.
yeah. Oh, really? Absolutely. Yeah, just so well done, so well done. Like Yoshitoki Oima, just one of my all-time favorite writers and storytellers and artists. Like, oh, I love her so much.
Hmm.
Large, like mostly for the story, but you know, A Silent Voice is also, I think, a masterpiece. But this one especially.
I finally watched that Silent Voice. I guess we can talk about it later,
Oh,
but I
oh,
finally
nice.
watched it.
Recently or
Yeah, just
ah,
like a few days ago.
oh, lovely, awesome. But yeah, cool. I'm happy to hear it. But I guess my last couple of things on Gugu here was is kind of like after he passed away stuff, where basically the same as with March, he found himself in a sort of like seemingly like a paradise kind of where everything was just perfect for him and basically all of his dreams were fulfilled until he kind of realizes that everything is a little bit too perfect, and so he realized that he was that he had passed away. It was basically the exact same thing as we saw with March in Volume 2.
Hmm.
And one of the things I love the most about that was when like basically the imagery of him holding his arms around all of the others as they're crying. It was so touching to me, and I do think that in death he forgave his brother, and
Hmm.
I think that was well if that is the case anyway, which I think
Yeah.
because he has his he's holding like his arms around everyone, including his brother, and his brother is actually one like I think it's Boozman and his brother are the two that he's holding his arm or his hands on in that last image there. So I do think he forgives his brother, and I think that's a really nice thing, even though he was already dead. I think it's nice.
Hmm. In the moment where Gugu is talking to Fushi and says, "I have no regrets," which I really liked, by the way.
Mm,
That you see March behind the door, looking kind of shy.
exactly.
I was trying to think why that would be the case, other than big, big person here, big stranger here, scary guy. But I go back to March's death. March saw the bear when she had died in a similar kind of way that March and Gugu meet. So it just makes me wonder if there's like a kind of a passing of a torch or a welcoming committee thing going on
Mm.
where yeah, the previous entry to Fushi's, I guess, transformation collection. That's a terrible thing to say, but uh, welcomes a new one. But other than that, I can't think of the reason why she would be there and just
Mm.
kind of hiding.
I had a thought about that actually.
Oh yes, please do.
Basically, in the battle with the Nokker, it was the form of March that was stolen away. So at that point in time, Fushi doesn't have any recollection of March, and he isn't able to transform into her.
Oh,
So I'm thinking it might be related to that. That like
okay, yeah.
somehow her spirit or whatever these things are, somehow it's she's with him, but maybe not to the extent that the others are, like that Gugu and the wolf and the bear are.
Hmm.
Although I mean, I, that was my best interpretation of that because she definitely it was definitely like something about that, right? Because I
Right.
don't think like seeing March that way definitely was peculiar, and since she was the only one that was stolen by the Knocker, I think it might be related to that. Like she is there, but she's being held back somehow, maybe by the Nokker power.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hmm.
Like, she's still there, but all of Fushi's memory of her is gone. So Fushi himself can't recognize or see her,
Hmm.
but she's still technically still there.
Right, right.
Maybe.
Something like that. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's yeah. I like that. I will look. I will take that as my own.
Cool.
Well, I mean, share. I will share that with you. With you.
Lovely, lovely. Do you got anything more on Gugu?
No, I really don't have much other than that. Just how emotional it was for me to read that, and
Yes.
I could see, you know, a lot of people getting to that part in the anime and just bawling and putting this a lot higher up on their list of favorite shows.
I'm sure. Like so far, like just judging by how the anime has been doing so far, I have very high hopes for this part of it once it gets there. Uh, if it's already been covered by the time this episode releases, whereas I'm sorry, so far there's only been 2 Gugu episodes released in the anime as of when we're recording this, so I have not seen that yet. But yeah, I am so excited to see it animated because yeah, I'm sure it will be fantastic.
Hmm.
The music also is phenomenal in this anime, so I'm sure that can also add a lot to moments like this.
Indeed.
But anyway, let's move on to Rean. We learn pretty much right off the bat that she is turning 16, so we were right about well, assuming her age or her and Gugu's ages, because I mean I think it's safe to say they're basically the same age, like they can't be
Yeah,
too far apart. So saying that they're both 16 here is pretty safe bet, I think.
I agree.
So it was nice to get that confirmed, and she and Fushi have become great friends. Like they have, as we see, like basically the first scene in the book. It was really nice to see kind of the dynamic they'd been able to kind of create, and the friendship they have at this point in the story is really nice. Basically, like making jokes with each other and sewing things together, and like yeah, just yeah, really sweet dynamic. Oh yeah, and we also learn about her being forced into marriage against her will.
Yeah.
And of course, she wants to marry someone that she actually loves, and that's Gugu, which was also nice to get confirmed in this book because it wasn't. Like, it was never perfectly made clear in the first one. I mean, she may not have even felt that way in the first book. It might be something that's developed over these 4 years, but at the very least, it was nice to know that from the get go of this volume.
So here's my thoughts on her feelings for Gugu, or at least how they developed.
Uh huh.
I think over time, yeah, they definitely developed. I think Gugu probably had a little crush on her longer than she did, but we do know that at the very least she took notice of him from a long time, from all the when he was selling the vegetables.
Right.
So at the very least she was aware of him, took notice of him. Now whether or not she had any sort of feelings at that time, it can't. I guess we can't really say, but at the very least, she was able to recall that moment when she received that ring back
Right.
um, via Shin and whatnot. So I think, yeah, it's just over time as she got to know Gugu and as they kind of grew up in those 4 years, I totally think that she grew to love. And of course, that confession he made, that drunken confession he made, probably was a catalyst for some of those feelings as
Mm.
well.
I think
Um,
even before that, in the scene they had in the tent
oh,
last volume.
it wasn't the start, but I
Mm.
think it definitely kind of got her thinking about it a lot.
True. True. Yeah, for sure. It definitely started growing in volume 3 and surely has been growing into something much bigger during these past 4 years. Absolutely.
Hmm.
It's kind of like because I had the thought after I had read this volume today that ooh, what if there would be like a spin-off book or books that just covers these 4 years? But then I'm like, I guess that might just be like unnecessary filler that might ruin kind of the magic of it. But at
Maybe.
the same time, I can't help but feel like it would be so much fun to just see these characters more.
True,
So I'm kind of
true.
torn on that.
Yeah, getting more Gugu and Dean would be awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love those
Yeah.
two.
I like how in the beginning we see she's asking Fushi questions about Gugu,
Yes.
where when she first came to the story, she was asking Gugu about Fushi.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so it's kind of a switch in dynamic
Right.
in her interests. And that's why I think at the very beginning, I think she had a little crush on Fushi, but just kind of like just a little, um, oh he's an older guy. I heard
Well, yeah, he's tall and he's cute. Like
right, right.
it's kind of
So,
shallow, kind of on that
but not
level.
right, yeah, pretty shallow. So nothing deep.
Hmm.
But as time went, obviously she grew more of a deep love for Gugu.
Yeah, and actually, real quick on that, I think Gugu's initial crush on Rean was probably just as shallow as that, but it also
Sure,
became something much more.
yeah,
Hmm.
I agree. Definitely, and obviously Volume 3 was the reason for that, I
Hmm.
think. But I just love that scene. I know you're calling it cringe, but
No, I loved it too. I loved the cringe.
the scene with uh, Gugu sleeping and her just coming up to him.
Uh-huh.
I just loved her faces and how kind of like giddy she was during that moment. Like, you could tell that she was just really happy to see him and was feeling these love feelings, whatever you
Right.
call it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's odd that she would, but kind of endearing as she puts trying to put the ring on his hand. And I don't know if you notice, and maybe I'm not aware, but the finger she was putting the ring on was the wedding finger, wasn't it? The
Oh,
the left
the
the left
left
ring
ring
finger.
finger.
Yeah, she was totally putting it on
Yes, yes, that does look like the wedding finger.
the.
That's right.
And so, which I mean one that's the I mean that's not subtle, but it's funny to me, or not funny, but it's cute to me because when you fast forward after Gugu's death and she's on the bed of the purple flowers, the dream bell flowers,
Hmm.
she has the ring on on her wedding ring, on her wedding finger,
Right. Oh yeah, precisely. Yeah,
and
that's really
yeah,
nice.
that's that kind of hurt me a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really nice catch.
So I love the love between these two, and I mean I'm not necessarily done per se, but just I don't I don't even know if I need Dean to come back into the story. I mean, if she does, great.
Hmm.
Um, I let more character growth for her, sure, but I think their story was just so nicely concluded
Yeah.
or beautifully concluded, and I guess nicely is the wrong word for some people.
Eh.
It can't be tragic and nice. Like, okay, fine, beautifully
Right.
beautifully concluded.
Hmm.
That to add any more might take away from that, but I am not
Yes.
the author.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, but I can definitely agree there. Like then that's kind of why I was feeling, earlier when I said about, oh, what if she did like a spin-off thing that takes place over the time skip, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
the same reason why I'm like a bit skeptic to that still. It's like because what we have is just so perfect and just
Yeah.
as it is. But yeah, about the scene where she tried to put the ring on his finger, I think well she's kind of I think a bit stressed. Well, I think she's partially stressed out in that scene to a degree because kind of time is running short and because her she needs to kind of make her thing with him official before her birthday. Like I think she feels
That's
a bit
true.
of
True.
time pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So she does. I think that's part of why she kind of acts a little bit weird in that scene, and
Mm.
also because just moments before that, Fushi had told her that Gugu likes her,
Mm.
which she might not have known for sure. Well, okay, I know she did probably. She okay, yeah, no, actually, but at the same, well, okay, so 4 years ago, a drunk Gugu told her that he loved her most. But now, like, so, but that was a long time ago. So for Fushi to
Uh-huh.
tell her that now, I think that still made a big impact on her, and
Yeah,
that made her very happy.
it could be that she took those drunken words more seriously after Fushi said,
Oh yeah,
that Gugu likes you. So.
exactly, precisely. So I think there was a big mix of like just feeling very very, very happy, and also
Hmm.
being a little bit stressed out, kind of in a rush about all of that, that made her act the way she did in that scene. Kind of short tempered and yeah, just a little bit off somehow. Uh, uh, so yeah, I just like yeah. So don't get me wrong, I still really like that scene. It's just and it makes sense with all this said. Uh, but it is definitely an odd scene, I think, in a way, like the way she kind of confesses to him in that rushed manner, kind of. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome.
I also love the scene on the balcony
Yes.
where balcony was the word I was trying to remember a
Oh.
while ago.
Oh.
I was saying
Right.
like deck or whatever.
Oh.
Anyway,
Oh.
balcony. Uh, I loved that scene between those two because it's just kind of a back and forth of remembering that day that Gugu saved her life, and I mean obviously Gugu knew all along, but it took Nina a while to pick up on it. But
Hmm.
to share in that moment together and to have Gugu realize that she doesn't hate him for what he did,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a really great moment, and I was so upset that the stupid knocker
Mm.
comes in and ruins that entire moment.
Right.
You know, I know this is a old expression, but this is why we can't have nice things. I
It's all because of the knockers.
because the knockers. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
trying to knock everybody out. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a nice, aha, gotcha moment, and it added to the tragedy of it all. It really did. But man, it would have been great to have, you know, just not there been anything to ruin that moment. Uh, uh, it's just that's just not the kind of story she's trying to tell.
Well, yeah, yeah, and
She being Oima.
right, and I mean, if they hadn't arrived there, or if the knockers hadn't attacked there, then Gugu and Rean would have definitely confessed their love for each other right then and there.
Right there. Uh huh.
Um, and if they had done that, then they couldn't have done it when they did it later on, which like those couple pages there when they're underneath the rubble,
Well, sure.
that's
For the it was important for the tragic ending, for the
right.
tragic love confession and everything. Of course, of
Mhm.
course. But for the happy, you know, happily ever after love story, it totally ruined it.
It did. It absolutely did. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. It was also nice how Reen was able to. I think she put it together when she received the dream bellflower from Gugu. She
hmm
may not have known for sure, but I think she was sort of suspecting that it was him that did save her that day, and basically that was why she asked him about how he ended up with his face the way it is, because she was already suspecting that. She just wanted to hear from him.
Yeah, agreed. Now, does this flower ever return back into the story in some aspect?
Do you want me to answer that or?
Well, I guess it's more of like a rhetorical question
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because they bring up the name Dream Bell. Was it Dream Bell? Is that what they called it?
Dream bellflower.
Dream Bell flower.
Like bellflower is a real life flower.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's a dream
I
bellflower.
wasn't aware of the bell flower.
Mm.
So Dream Bell flower. Okay, so maybe it doesn't have any significance. I just thought maybe the name itself was
Mm.
important, but
Gotcha.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe I don't know. But she did save Gugu's life by shoving him aside, just like he had saved her
Mm-hmm.
back then, which I thought was a nice touch. Well, actually, he saved her by shoving her twice before that, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So and now she saved him from the knocker by shoving him aside. Wasn't a nice little thing.
Saving each other,
Yeah, man,
supporting each other as real relationship should be.
they're so perfect together.
Yeah, they really are.
Uh, and another thing I really loved was when they're lying there under the rubble, and they're having that moment, and she opens up his mask, and she sees his face for the first time right before they kiss, and and he tells her that he loves her, she doesn't even flinch. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's only happy to see him, to be able to look at him, and that's one of the most beautiful things I think ever. Like that's so
Yeah.
good, so good.
Why did he have to die?
Mm, he will be missed. So he will be so missed. The internet is gonna mourn for a long time when the anime gets there, I'm sure.
Like this is one of those deaths that you see coming because you know it's. I mean, obviously Fushi's going to get this ability, but
Mm,
as it's like one of the most obvious yet least wanted deaths I've ever seen.
mm,
You know, you know, some famous deaths in medium are either surprising or you see it coming from a mile away. But it's just this one, I didn't want it to happen.
yeah.
I wanted him to keep on going in some capacity. I wanted him to live a long life. Yeah, so it just hits so hard. I know we're supposed to be talking about Dean now, but I guess this moment is related. You know, in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you know, Neen doesn't get to have that long life with the love of her life. And, you know, maybe she will never marry
Mm,
again, or not again, but never marry.
right.
Um, I guess we may never know unless she comes back to the story. But it's, I mean, I don't blame her,
Yeah.
especially in the situation she is, where she was able to find someone that she truly loved, and potentially, maybe one day marry the person that she loved. But now that's taken away from her, she could be forced into marrying something arranged.
Right.
That's just a maybe because the dad seemed to be somewhat supportive of her feelings at the end there.
Exactly.
Um,
Mm.
I mean, I'm not sure how long that support will last. Like maybe a few more, like 4 more years later, he's like, "All right, morning's over." Like, but who
Yeah,
knows?
right. True. We can't know for sure. But I really did like that moment though when she straight up tells him that she is not going to get married because she is in love with someone else. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that was good. And I just well, I can only hope that she will hold on to that and that she will be able to get her parents' blessing kind of on that and that she will be able to well, only marry someone that she is actually in love with. But more stuff after her after Gugu's death when she's talking to Fushi when Fushi is in Gugu's form he slips up and he accidentally says like he accidentally almost says Gugu when he's supposed to be talking about himself. And that I guess that can be seen as Rean kind of starting to understand that something is up. However, I thought in that scene it felt somehow like Rean was already before the slip up starting to kind of notice that that wasn't the real Gugu, like that she was talking to Fushi somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know if it happened like maybe when she was hugging him, like the initial hug there when she got inside and just embraced him. Like maybe she noticed something then, or otherwise through interact, like just talking. I think she sensed that everything wasn't as it seemed even before that obvious slip up.
Maybe she couldn't keep fooling herself once that slip up happened. I don't know.
Yeah. Like at the very least, though, by the time that she's lying in the grass by the bellflower or the dream bellflowers, and her father finds her, at least by then she has definitely been able to understand everything.
Oh yeah.
When she says that he's probably with him now. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
that line. Whew.
That yeah.
Because then it's
Oof.
like yeah, she knows, she understands everything, and this was kind of one of the things also that I kind of hint or I mentioned or that was mentioned in the previous volume where Pioran says to Rean that Fushi has to become human fast, which I still think could have been like the first little hint to Rean that something supernatural sort of was happening there.
Mm.
But then with all of this new stuff added, I think she was able to piece it all together on her own. And it is also mentioned after Gugu leaves when Pioran catches up to him that that Rean does know everything now, and that it was Rean who, or at least it seemed like it was Rean that kind of wanted Pioran to go with Fushi. So that was nice.
Yeah,
So do we got anything more on Rean?
I do not.
All right. So then let's move on to Pioran a bit. As we said, she goes with Fushi when he leaves, or she catches up to him, and she goes with him even though he tries to go alone, or he wants to go alone. And Fushi tells her about the black hooded guy. So she's probably the only human that knows of him, or at least actually like knows who like what he's about, kind of.
Right.
So that's interesting.
That's nice he's able to confide in someone
Exactly.
about that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I think it also gives Fushi a kind of a goal as he goes about his journey, keep Pioran safe.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they get separated in this next arc.
Yeah.
But that still is his driving goal, is to get Pioran out of there.
Precisely.
Escape this area. So
yeah.
I guess he becomes more of a mechanic at that point. But I hope she's okay. I really do.
Yeah, totally. And she really is the one that he has known the longest, because she's been around ever since the March and Perona arc.
Right.
So that's really longer than Gugu, Rean, and Boozman. But yeah, she's hanging in there, I hope. She also gave us one of my favorite quotes from this volume. She said, "If we're forgotten, that's when we truly die."
Oh yeah.
And I think that just really sums up one of the most important themes in this story, because I think that's what it's about to a large extent. Ever since the first chapter, it's been about remembering those that we love.
I agree. And Gugu even brings that up in volume 3, where he asks Fushi to turn it to him when Gugu dies.
Exactly.
And then he's like, that way I'll know that at least someone is able to remember me, and I'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely a caring theme.
For sure. Got anything more on Pioran?
I do not.
Then let's talk about Boozman a bit.
Freaking jinxed it, man! Like, man, I just want him to live a long life. Live long enough so I could see him in his entirety. See how he lives his life. Bruh. Red flags, Boozman. You don't say that kind of thing in this story, okay?
Yeah.
Intellectual my butt.
Well, yeah, it is what it is. I thought it was really nice though how he admitted, to Gugu how he thinks of him as his own grandson, and like that whole thing. He was really emotional. Like he got so like that. This emotional side of Boozman wasn't something we really got to see in the first book, or in volume 3, and I thought it was really nice to get that how. Yeah, when he was going on about, I hate the fact that I'm going to die before Gugu, because that way I won't be able to see him live through his entire life and stuff like that. It was really nice to see that side of him.
Yeah.
And he worked for a whole year making that new mask for Gugu, the fire-breathing helmet. So cool. Such a cool invention.
Yeah, it was.
Also a really cool design, I think.
Yeah, it's grown on me. I think I still like the first one better. I don't know why.
I see.
But I do think the second one is cool too.
Mm-hmm. I like how that kind of marks like the older him in a sense. Like whenever I think of, I guess presumably 16-year-old Gugu, I think of him with that mask, and when I think of the 12-year-old Gugu, I think of him with the other mask.
That's fair.
But yes, and is that it on Boozman?
Yep.
All right, then let's move on to Shin. First of all, how does he have the nerve to show up out of nowhere after 4 years and say that Gugu left him? He said that. He said that. Like
I know. I don't know why.
How dare?
Is he talking about when he gave the ring to Shin and just walked away? Is that what he's insinuating? But even if he is, you're the one who walked out on Gugu in the first place. Right. It doesn't even matter what he did after that, really.
Yeah,
You know.
totally, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't. That's it. Seems like a backhanded compliment, if anything. Even if he
Mm,
has his life all together, which it seems like he does, that's not an okay thing to say.
yeah. However, I will say that was really the only thing he said that didn't sit right with me.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
I am overall, I ultimately pretty cool with him now. You know, turns out he hadn't sold the ring, which I think was pretty cool.
Hmm.
And in a sense, I feel bad for him, to be honest, because I think he did learn his lesson after that big mistake he made, which was, to abandon Gugu. I think he learned from that mistake, and he has surely paid for it. Although that's no excuse, I still think what he did is absolutely terrible. But I do think that he has gotten kind of out of that as a probably a better man, a stronger person.
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, for his own character growth, it was, or his for his own character, it was important for him to seek forgiveness,
Mm.
um, in the way he did. But again, I don't blame Gugu for taking the side he did, and I'm glad that Shin was able to accept that. And he didn't say, "Well, forget you, man," or anything like that. He said, "I'll always be there for you."
Yes.
You know, basically, as families should be, um,
Mm.
especially if they make a mistake like that. So
Right.
I think that overall, yeah, he's made some incredible strides, and this whole interaction was much more wholesome. I mean, it was confrontational, but it was more a little more wholesome than I thought it would end up being. So
Mm. Mm.
that was good, especially to see in this story where happiness is so fleeting sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And I think he also really lived up to that, like what he said that he wanted to be there for Gugu, where he actually showed up at the Cropp house when it was
Yeah.
crumbling. He just like Pioran and Boozman, there was a little bit where we saw them from a distance. They noticed that shit was going down over there, like apparently because it was such a big thing that was happening that it was probably noticeable from pretty far away. So I imagine Shin probably knew that Gugu was there that day, and so he got worried when he noticed that there was a bunch of noise and smoke and things. So he actually arrived ultimately too late, but he was there to carry Gugu's body away on his back. So
Yeah,
at the very least, I thought that was kind of nice.
indeed.
Do you have anything specifically on the Cropp family, like Rean's parents, or
No, I don't. Not. I mean, besides of what the interaction between Nina and her dad at the end there.
right, which we talked about a little bit?
Uh, you
Um,
know, I wonder. It's just me just thinking about what ifs. If Gugu was able to survive after that whole entire incident,
uh huh.
having saved Dean multiple times, and the Cropp couple.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think more so than before, he would have left a great impression on her parents,
Yes.
and maybe would have been able to take Neen's hand in marriage eventually,
Hmm.
um, without it being with support from the parents.
I think so.
But obviously, that did what won't happen.
I actually, well, yeah. But I actually have something to back that up
Huh.
because there was a in between chapter page again in the physical book,
Oh.
which was straight up a letter from Ego's Cropp, the father, to
Huh.
Shin,
Oh.
in which he expressed his regret over everything that happened, and he acknowledged that Gugu had saved him and his wife as well as their daughter's life that day, and how like it was most of the letter was very much about him kind of praising Gugu, like speaking very highly of him, and he also expressed that he wished to spend the rest of his life kind of repaying Shin for his brother's sacrifice, because like to kind of make up for the loss that Shin had. It was a really nicely written letter, I think, from this character that initially in the story, like when we first got to see him, was not super cool. It seemed, but I think I think as we also said a little bit last time, he's not all bad. He
Right.
does have redeeming traits as well. But yeah, it was a really nice letter, I thought, how he wrote that to Shin. And there was one other thing, actually, touched on a little bit. Like, most of it, as I said, was regarding kind of Gugu and how he, well, he seemed to really appreciate his actions and be very sad over what had happened. But there was also a little piece of that letter where he explains that he saw a mysterious and looming figure atop the pile of debris after the house had crumbled. And he says that for a moment no one could move, but then the figure disappeared and everything resumed kind of after that. And, well, the first place my brain went to was the Beholder, because that's like,
Yeah.
it seemed the most obvious at, I guess, at like, and I still think that's a very good possibility. However, thinking about it a little bit more, I also had the thought that what if alternatively it's whoever or whatever created the Nokker, uh,
It's not a bad
perhaps.
idea either.
Because I think I had the speculation back in volume 2 that there might be someone else with similar sorts of powers as the Beholder who created the Nokker, potentially.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it could have been that person or that being that was visible to Egos for a moment there. But yeah, it's hard to say. But yeah, that letter anyway was in the physical book. So just wanted to bring that up.
Hey, all I'm saying is, the Mr. Krabs is talking or writing the letter to Sheen. Sheen, your brother did so much for us. I want to express my gratitude with you. Here's my daughter's hand in marriage. What are you? No.
No, no, stop it with that.
uh, Life is cruel, man. No, no, I'm kidding. I don't think it will go that way. But
Nah.
that's all I have on.
Cool.
On that.
Then let's talk about the Beholder. He gives Fushi a brief warning about the Nokker attack in this, like, right before, very brief warning, like very shortly before it actually attacks the Cropp estate. But a little bit later in the volume, we also learn that he can sense the Nokkers, like their whereabouts and stuff, and he can give Fushi that information, which should maybe be kind of useful, moving forward. At least if he can give warnings more ahead of time than he did now.
For sure. Although I'm kind of hoping that the Nokker comes and attacks this arena place because it doesn't seem that great of great of a state.
Yeah, that's seems like a pretty messed up place.
But maybe next volume I'll have a different tune. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? It will be interesting to talk about it. More about the Beholder. We kind of got it, I guess, completely confirmed this time. It was a little bit in the previous volume where Fushi becomes an object without a consciousness. The Beholder can just touch him to bring him up to like a form that does have consciousness. That was like more explicitly obvious, I guess, in this book. And actually, in that same scene, like toward the end there, right before Pioran catches up with Fushi, in his interaction with the Beholder, there was something in that interaction that made me think that maybe Fushi has been in the world much longer than we know. Like, maybe he's been combating the Nokkers far longer, and like, but that he failed the last time and was thus reverted back to nothing. Like he had to start over from scratch.
Oh.
I kind of got that kind of feeling from that, like the little bits of information that we got from the Beholder in that scene. I don't actually know, but I think that could maybe be something kind of interesting.
That's a possibility that I don't think I've really thought of because I just assumed the story just started from the beginning, like
Right.
him dropping Fushi into the world. But maybe either that wasn't the first time he dropped Fushi into the world, or stuff went down in between all that. Interesting.
Right.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, right. Could be. Because if that is the case, then like this whole thing could go back like an infinite amount of time. Like it could have started like way, way, way back, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I am interested in at least. It would be nice to to find out eventually if that is true or
You
not.
know, that's a good point because I always thought the knockers were incredibly strong to start off with
Mm,
against when we first saw them, their abilities to steal Fushi's forms. While it seems very strong, but its ability to use them and also the vegetation or whatever powers it has,
mm,
it seems like slightly overpowered in some ways. I mean, clearly Fushi's able to stop it on multiple occasions, but it makes you wonder if over time the the knocker got this strong, and then
right.
and maybe eventually it beat Fushi at one point. I don't know. That's just me thinking out loud since you
Hmm.
said that because that is a very interesting theory.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, it could definitely be very interesting. And the last thing I had on the Beholder here is he says that he will be gone one day. Like Fushi will presumably outlive him. And I thought that was really interesting just because he really seems like some kind of godlike being. And so you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't expect him to die or otherwise vanish or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he will somehow for some reason. So
Yeah,
yeah, that was just an interesting little thing. Obviously, we don't know. We don't have too much to go on regarding that, but still an interesting little piece of information.
indeed.
Anything more on the Beholder?
No.
Then let's talk a little bit more about the Nokker. Actually,
Oh, okay.
we've already said a few things, but well, we did get to see in this volume that they are now using stone armor to block the fire, which was smart. They learned from the last time, and also as we said earlier, they did steal March's form from Fushi, so that is that's bad. Really, the first time they get away with stealing something, and of course it's March. Poor March.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, it escaped because of like the stones were cracking because of they were still hot from the fire, but then it got into the cold water, so they started to crack. I thought that was an interesting little thing about that, and it will be interesting to see how Fushi deals with the armored knockers from here on out. If he does find some kind of solution that will work in all situations, like even when there isn't water to cool it off with and stuff.
Hmm.
So that will be interesting.
Yeah, he's got to get a water type
Exactly.
transformation. You know,
Yeah.
Rock is weak to water. Pokemon has taught me this.
Yes, clearly. Yeah, so I guess that was all I wanted to just point out about the Knocker. They definitely are growing and learning and,
Yeah,
evolving.
and I wonder, is it just the knockers themselves that are learning and growing, or is it
Mm,
the person who created the knockers adjusting them, like giving them updates, like software
right.
updates,
Yeah. Right, exactly.
or is it hardware in this case?
That is interesting cuz yeah, again, we don't know for a fact, I guess, that that's the case that there was someone who created them.
I mean, he's got to be. I think don't they say that?
I can't remember if they exactly said that. I think we at least speculated about it though.
Hmm.
I think they are still very much a mystery though. But anyway, it's interesting to see, I guess, why they're learning and how they're learning. But I'm sure we'll learn more as we go on.
Yep, yep.
Do you have any other character from the kind of main part of the book that you want to talk about?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
Then there's one other character from the last bit of it. The girl who tricks Fushi and Pioran to get on the ship that brings them to Jananda, the prison island. She appears to have an owl and a group of friends there on the island, and we don't really know too much else about her. It does seem like she had a reason, maybe, for tricking Fuji and Pioran onto the ship, although that was also kind of hard to say exactly. And I just want to double check. She didn't get a name in this book, did she?
I don't recall one.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it here either. So she shall remain nameless for now. But yeah, I guess, do you have anything you would like to say about her or speculate or anything like that?
I think she has like the biggest eyes uh, out of anybody in this cast so far. I feel like maybe I'm wrong.
Rean's fiance would like her because he seemed to like her. Like he liked Rean's big eyes. I think that was like the first thing he said to her. Oh, you have big eyes. How cute. So he might like this girl. Anyway,
So I'm wondering what could be the new bond he gains here, the familial bond potentially. Maybe she'll step away from family, or maybe it'll be a big sister type of a thing,
that would be nice.
or maybe little sister. I don't know.
Whichever would be very nice actually.
But then again, you have the other three people who are with Big Eyed Girl. So I wonder. Then again, they had a whole thing. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud at this point. So
Right.
the only thing we can do is read the next volume.
Yes, and I keep on looking forward to the next discussions of this series because these are some good books. We are past my two favorite ones, but that doesn't mean I don't love the rest of them. So, because I absolutely still do.
Great. Yeah, I just hope it doesn't go downhill from here. This is like on this incredible high of volume 3 and 4, which I don't know which one I can say I like better.
Yeah.
Because while 4 had me bawling, 3 was so important to their story and character progression to make me feel the way I did in volume 4. So it's kind of like it's hard for me to say which one
Yeah.
I like more.
I actually, after having read Volume 4 today, I also kind of felt that exact same way. They are very close. They're just such a great duo, kind of. Like, they just work so well together because they really tell, like, one story together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, dude, I'm so happy that you loved Volumes 3 and 4 just as much as I did. I'm so happy about that.
Dude,
And that you
you
also...
did not overhype it at all.
That's good.
I loved it.
Well, wonderful. I'm so happy to hear it. And that you also fell in love with these characters.
So much.
So happy to hear that.
Much.
So yeah, what can I say? I'm excited to talk about Volume 5 next time. So I guess that's it. If you enjoy our content, you can follow us on Twitter at Umami Manga. If you like this episode, please share it around with anyone you think might enjoy it too. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time where we'll talk about Volume 5. Bye bye.
See you later. I think it's the flower that did it because
Yeah, that's what I said.
She-
Didn't I say that?
I thought you said ring.
Did I say ring? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I said ring. I definitely meant the flower.
Oh, okay. Now I'm wondering. Maybe my hearing is going.
Or maybe it's possible I said ring because I mean there's a bunch, like, it could have been
Well,
on my mind. Anyway,
Your magic editing skills will fix it.
or not. Maybe we'll keep all this. We'll see. We'll see. Regardless, yes, the ring, the flower. We're definitely keeping this now.